and get started. So thank you so much for being here today. I wanted to especially welcome those students who are not currently in our program but have come to join us. We're really excited to be able to talk with you. And we're really, even though this is a crazy time, it's exciting to be able to, you know, still get together and share information and talk about music education together. So thank you so much for being here. We're really looking forward to this. I'm going to start off by just doing some quick intros. I'll start with myself. My name is Brittany Cooper. I am the board chair for the Memphis Youth Symphony program. Debbie.
Sorry, this is Debbie Heath. I am orchestra manager of the Memphis Youth Symphony program.
Kalena.
Greetings, folks. My name is Kalena Bovell, originally from California, and I am the conductor of the Youth Symphony.
Dr. Kang.
Hi, I am Long Kang. I'm the conductor of the string orchestra.
And last but not least.
Hey guys, I'm Chelsea Subick. I conduct the Prelude Strings Orchestra.
So these are our wonderful conductors. They're just great humans that you get to work with, for those of you who don't know them. I'm really looking forward to getting some of their insight as they share with you what makes a successful audition. So we're going to have the conductors kind of each take their turn talking about what they're listening for behind the screen, maybe some audition techniques, some practice tips, sight reading, those kinds of things. Feel free, as you have questions, just pop them in the chat, and then we'll make sure after each conductor to take some time and answer those questions. So we're going to start with Ms. Subick.
Hey, so what I wanted to talk about first was kind of what the audition process looks like. For the Prelude group, there isn't a screen, so it's not a blind audition. This year, none of the auditions will be blind because it'll all be through video. But what you need to know about what the audition process looks like is you need to prepare a solo, you need to prepare the prepared excerpts, you need to be practicing your scales, and there's also a sight reading portion generally. So what you need to know is if there is a particular order that they want you guys to go in. A lot of times what I like to do is start with easy stuff and go to the hard stuff. So what you're most comfortable with is probably going to be your solo. So it's probably a great idea if they don't tell you what order to play everything in, start with your solo because that's what you're more comfortable with. And then the prepared repertoire or the excerpts would be next. And then the scales, and then the sight reading is kind of the scariest part for a lot of people. So that usually would be last on my checklist. And we just uploaded a short video on some sight reading tips and tricks. And I think it's on our Instagram and maybe our Facebook page as well. So you guys should check that out. Something when I was auditioning, I'm a music teacher, so I don't do any auditions anymore, but I would get really nervous before my auditions, and my professor in college had a really great way of helping me cope with my nerves. And it sounds crazy at the beginning, but he would have me run up and down the hallway, and then I'd go back into the studio, and then I would play my piece. And that gets your blood pumping, your heart racing. You feel kind of shaky, like especially if you've been eaten enough. And then you have to play, and you're not actually nervous, but your body replicates what you're feeling when you're freaking out, and it teaches your brain to kind of play through those nerves. So if you don't have a lot of room, maybe you can do some jumping jacks or something like that. But like I said, it replicates the feeling of being nervous, and you can help push yourself through playing through those nerves. Something else to prepare is to play in front of other people, which for a lot of us can be kind of scary. Maybe you're used to playing in front of your parents. You can FaceTime with somebody, some of your friends from orchestra, play for each other so that you guys can get some feedback. Also record yourself. For some reason, I have no problem speaking in front of people, but if I need to record myself, it's like way more daunting. And I think that's because as musicians, a lot of us are like our own toughest critics. So if you notice something in a recording that maybe went really, really well, practice that so you can be over the top with it, so that you can show it off to whoever you're auditioning for. And if you notice something in your recording that maybe you didn't really like, then chances are that the director may also notice that. So that's something that, you know, just to make your checklist to go through and see what maybe still needs some work. But yeah, I know that was a lot. I see some people are typing some questions in the chat. But yeah, I guess it's Long Long's turn.
Yes, let me look at the chat. So do I need to answer their questions first? No, let me talk about.
I haven't seen any come into the chat yet, but y'all just keep asking
sorry.
questions as
Okay.
you have them, and we'll interject and answer those as they come in.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about like what I'm listening to when I listen to audition. So usually, like if you want to stand out, want to be better than other students, I think the first is your tone. But I know that's the most important thing to improve. Like you can practice with the metronome at home 100 times. You can play perfectly in tune. But like the tone is the most difficult part, I feel like, to improve. Even for me to teach my students how to get a really good tone. I think that's a long way. It's not like one day you can play with a good tone. I think to get a good instrument, it can help a little bit. The other way is to practice really slowly and then really listen to yourself when you practice. I think that's the really difficult part. Everyone just want to play really fast. But if you practice slowly and then start to listen to yourself, then you can start to improve your tone because you start to pay attention to the tone you produce, not just the pitch or just the rhythm you play. So I think that's especially behind when I judge the audition. Most of the time I'm behind the screen, so I don't know who's playing. The first thing will draw my attention to is the good tone, and then the next thing will be the rhythm. So I want to make sure I hear the correct rhythm when I compare to the music in front of me, and then the right pitch. So those three things are very important. And then there's one thing I want to mention is like when you are outside the audition room, make sure you don't don't pay attention to the person who play inside the room, because that sometimes will bother you and it will affect you too. Especially I think at the OS side reading room, like a lot of students, they just try to listen to the person who's playing inside, and then the person plays wrong, and then you start to remember those wrong rhythms. So when you go inside, even when you see the very simple rhythm, you start to play like the person before. So just make sure when you're outside the audition room, you really just focus on your own music. Just don't listen to the person who plays inside the audition room. I think that will help you a lot. Yeah, that's my tips.
Okay. We just got a question. Is it okay if we don't play the piece as fast as it's written? And somebody said seconded. So Dr. Kang, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That just like when I read the music and if you see the tempo is like 140, and then the kids come in play 120 perfectly, I think that person will get higher score than someone play 140 but like miss a note or like play wrong rhythms. So I think to be on the safe side, just play a little bit slower will be a good idea. But you don't want to play like a super slow, then you won't get any points. Yes.
Yeah, I want to speak to that. Like you want to be at least within the vicinity of the tempo. So if as Long Mr. Kang said, if the tempo marking is 140, but let's say you come in playing it at 88, that is far too slow, and we aren't able to really get a true sense of your musicianship and if you know the part. So try to be at least within the vicinity of what that tempo marking is.
But yes, I have heard. We also, for anybody who's a violinist who is auditioning for the U Symphony, we have a great video on our website of Barry Cooper working on those excerpts, and she says on every single one of them, I would rather hear you do it nice and clean and accurately and a little bit below tempo than at the right speed. So check that out, and we have more videos that we'll be posting with audition tips for you all coming in the near future. Keep those questions rolling, and we'll move over to Ms. Bovell.
So hello everyone. Firstly, I just wanted to tell you what I listen for when I also judge auditions. So I'm very similar to Mr. Kang in that the first thing that I listen for is your tone. You know, what kind of colors can you produce on your instruments, both on the lower registers and on the higher register, going from first position all the way up to maybe fifth or sixth. because I like to see if you can produce some type of even tone throughout the instrument as opposed to just in one position or in one place on the instrument. The second thing I listen for is your rhythm. How accurate is your rhythm? Because you can have a great sound, but if you play too slow or too fast, that can really kill your audition for me. The third thing I listen for is your intonation. So the one thing about playing violin is not, or playing any string instrument, is not everyone plays in tune. But the thing is how quickly can you adjust? And so in order to do that, you have to really play slowly and listen to every single note that you're playing, and then also being sure that you know exactly where that note falls on the fingerboard. And so after that, I listen for your musicianship. Are you playing with vibrato? Are you playing with rubato? What are your ideas for this particular piece or this particular section? Even when you play your scale or an etude. My teacher in undergrad would always say, make an etude sound like a piece of music. And so I listen to see if you can also do those things. And then the last thing that's really important for me, I think, is do you know the part? So sometimes people come into auditions and you can tell that they've never listened to a recording. And it's blatantly obvious because either the tempos are way off. So it's, you know, we live in a society where we have so much advantage in terms of technology, and there's so many recordings out there. So I think it's important to listen to as many recordings as possible so that you also get a sense of the piece. But then once you start working on those excerpts, stop listening to recordings so that you can really put your stamp on it. So those are my most important things. And, you know, I think musicianship, in addition to tone, is the two of the biggest things that I really look for. Because for a youth symphony, we go beyond just playing the notes. We start to really focus on the musicality and the musicianship. So there's a question from Anu. Why are certain excerpts chosen for the audition? Anu, that's a great question. So Anu is a cellist currently in youth symphony. And to answer that question, most of the excerpts are chosen to see what your sound is like in playing something slow. Can you maintain long tones? What's your vibrato like? Do you have different vibrato speeds? We always try to also have a piece that shows how well you can play fast. Can you play off the string? Can you play different technical facilities? And then sometimes there's always some type of lyrical piece just so that we can see a true difference between you're playing fast, you're playing slow, and just kind of meshing or melding the two styles. That's a great question, Anu.
Any other questions? We're a shy group. You must have questions. You're here to learn about auditioning.
Well, if I can kind of stick with that same question for a second, and you know, Ms. Subick and Mr. Kang, how do you all go about choosing your particular excerpts?
For me,
well, sorry, go ahead.
Over. No, but you go ahead.
Okay. Since I'm generally working with the younger students, and some of us maybe are not as experienced, I like to choose excerpts that have a lot of accidentals in them, but are in easier key signatures, because I'm very interested to see how well your note reading is and how just your musical literacy. Because I feel that if you're kind of the opposite, well, not the opposite of what Ms. Bovell said, but since we're building in the prelude strings orchestra, if you can get your notes and your rhythms correct, then what we can do together later is to add in all of the extra stuff, all of the musicality that Ms. Bovell is looking for the students that are already auditioning for the youth symphony program or the youth symphony. So that's how I choose mine. Is there's always a lot of accidentals and maybe some weird rests or rhythms, just to see where you're at with your musical literacy.
Okay, so for me, it's like it depends on the groups. Like every time I might start, like every season, we'll start a little bit easier music, and then depends on the group. I feel like if I can push the group more, then I will challenge the students. And like for example, this year the audition music is the Serenade from the Tchaikovsky, because I think the group might be able to play next year. That's why I choose the excerpt, so like people can start to practice a little bit, and I kind of know the students when they come into the group, they kind of have the same standard or the same technique, like they will be able to play the Tchaikovsky, the Serenade too. So that's how I pick the excerpts. And also,
and
I love.
If I can add,
yes.
If I can add one more thing to why or how I choose my excerpts, I'm also choosing excerpts that are from the professional orchestral repertoire lists. So for cello, I believe I chose something from Brahms Symphony No. 2. For violins, there's Ruslan and Ludmilla. So these are actually coming from the professional repertoire, which, you know, students in the youth symphony are also being exposed to. So it's important for me that those students are able to experience this type of music, even if it's in an audition setting.
So we've got a bunch of questions rolling in. Thank you, everybody. One I'll take because it's very simple, and then there are some that are kind of similar that I'm going to kind of ask in more of a general way for all of you to answer. A question came in about sight reading. There will not be sight reading on the May video auditions, so you guys lucked out. We just couldn't find a very effective way to have sight reading, so that is our gift to you, no sight reading for the May auditions. So we have a question, what's it like to be the judges for the audition, and how do you judge for the audition? And then somebody else asked, how will it be scored during the audition? So I think there's some interest in what the scoring kind of looks like. Do you want to start, Ms. Bovell?
That's a great question. So when I judge, I mean, for one, you have to be sure that you're staying alert because you're listening to maybe 3 or 4 hours of auditions, and sometimes you can start to get oral fatigue. So if anything for me, I'm listening for the key points that I mentioned before, but then I'm also trying to see what about this particular student is standing out to me, and I make little notes on that. So again, it could be something that you've done musically, something that you've done with a phrase, a way that you have slowed down or sped up your vibrato for a certain passage. And then when it comes to scoring, we do have a rubric that we like to adhere to, and I'm trying to remember what exactly the rubric is, but I believe we score you on your scales. I believe it's on a 1 to 5. We score you on your piece itself. We also score the audition excerpts. And there's something else, but I can't quite recall. But we do have a rubric that we look at when judging.
Miss Debbie, do you know more specifically? I know that's something that you've seen a lot of, is what that rubric looks like. So is there anything that Ms. Bovell was missing?
No, in fact, I just typed it into chat, scale, solo, excerpts, and sight reading. You had it correct. And since we're not doing sight reading this year, that won't be an element. We're doing a bit more detailed scoring sheet from now on. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but in the past it is broken down to 20 points, 5 points for each of those sections. I think it's going to break down just a little bit more to 100 points, which means that there's just allows for more broader areas of scoring within that rubric. Nothing much different as far as what you guys do, but a little bit different from how it looks on the judges' side from now on.
Great. And from Zoe Wolf, who's a violinist in the youth symphony, what are some red flags when you're hearing auditions? Is there something that might happen that sticks out to y'all? Ms. Bovell, you unmuted yourself, so you get to go first.
Yes, I go. A huge red flag for me is when I know that you have not listened to that part. I mean, that just shows me that you didn't take the time to actually prepare that audition. And so I'm not going to automatically write you off because you still have to be objective as a judge. But that to me is a huge red flag. You should always know your music.
Anybody else?
Long and I are playing chicken here. Yeah, exactly the same thing as Ms. Bovell said. It is really apparent if you have never listened to a recording or if you've just never heard the piece before that you're playing. Another red flag for me is that you've chosen a solo that's inappropriate. Maybe it's like way too easy for you, or it doesn't really show your true musicianship or your skills. I know not everybody has a private teacher that can help them choose appropriate solos, so that may be something that we can help with in future education. Maybe we can make a list or share some sites or some resources I know for the younger students, anything out of the back of like Essential Elements, book 1, 2, 3, even though those are shorter pieces, they capture, again, your musical literacy and all the musicality that we're looking for. Your turn, Long Long.
The red flags to me is like if I hear something like just the wrong like key signature or the accidentals in the music, especially for the excerpt, that shows like you don't even pay attention when you practice. So those are the red flags. Like if you play like wrong key signature, that's a little bit too much. But like, but I heard a couple of times before. And then if you play like there's like a sharps and you just play natural there, then I know like when you practice, you don't pay attention. You just like that's a really red flag to me.
The next one I'll give to Miss Bovell because it's from a wind player. It's from Peter Vanderbilt, who's trombonist in our youth symphony. Can you tell someone's stance in the blind audition? So what he means by that is sitting versus standing. And does that affect scoring?
That's a great question. Actually, I can't tell whether someone is standing or sitting. I think it's just a personal preference for the player themselves. I know for me as a violinist, I prefer to stand when I play as opposed to sitting, just because it completely changes your posture and your technical facility. But no, I'm not able to tell. Ms. Subick or Mr. Kang, are you able to tell?
I don't think I'm able to tell. Something that I never believed my teachers when they told me they could tell, especially for a blind audition, was that they could tell the difference between your up bows and your down bows. That is true, you guys. We can hear if you're supposed to start up bow and you start down bow, it has a totally different quality to the sound. So make sure that you're doing your bows correctly, because even though we may not be able to hear whether you're sitting or standing, we can hear your bow directions.
I think certain pieces I might be able to tell, like if it's like a stronger, those forte, when you sit down, it's a little bit difficult to play. But like if it's just like a regular dynamics, it's really hard for me to tell if that person is standing up or sitting down. And I don't think that matters. Like when doing the audition, if you feel like you want to sit down, just tell the person to help you get a chair, just sit down and play. Yeah, just play comfortably. Yes.
So this next one I think is best for Miss Debbie. It's from Isabel. She's interested in knowing, do we know roughly how many people are auditioning this year? So we're hoping, Isabel, that number is going to continue to keep going up. But Miss Debbie, what's the count right now?
I don't have an exact count. I'm sorry, Isabel. This is a very different year for us. Many that respond won't have to audition, because if you're a current member and you're staying in your current ensemble, you won't have to audition. But I think we're probably going to, at this point, we've got about 60 or so, and the deadline is not until Thursday. So they're starting to really roll in right now. And so I'm thinking that number will go up quite a bit. Sorry, I don't have an exact number for you, but it's been really moving along just here in the last day or so.
And then the next question is kind of a similar one, Miss Debbie. And I think the answer is that it varies, but somebody asked how many spots are there per orchestra?
Again, that varies according to the instrument and the ensemble. Right now, to my knowledge, there's no limit to the numbers in prelude strings and string orchestra. We do have some instruments in youth symphony that will not have openings this year, specifically flute and clarinet. We do want those individuals who are candidates for those instruments to audition, however, because of us being able to put in the wind ensemble. We will be able to use you in the wind ensemble and concert band, and as well as a substitute or an alternate. There are many times throughout the year we need extra players. So the only way to get on those lists is to audition. So again, I know that's not a a pat answer to your question, but I hope it gives you some idea. I would have to go back and look at my list to check on a specific instrument and a specific ensemble. Does that help?
Yeah. It really does vary. Like Miss Debbie said, we don't have room for the flutes and the clarinets, but we have all 4 of our bassoonists are seniors and they're all leaving. So we have 4 spots for bassoons. So it really varies on year. And just to speak to that decision about this year, we really decided we needed to do what was best for our students. And because we had to cut our season short, we wanted to be inclusive and make sure that they were able to come back and have next year in the program. So that was a COVID-19 related decision, and that will not always be the case. But yes, we still would love for you to audition and still be part of our program. So back to the conductors, somebody asked, what is a reliable source to get recordings?
I'll take that one if that's fine. I always go to YouTube whenever I'm studying my score, or when I was mainly focused on violin. I would always go to YouTube to listen to recordings. I am also always on Spotify. I mean, you can find so many different recordings and sources available on Spotify. If you want to look at a score or look at a part, you can go to IMSLP, just so you can also check different editions, if that's something that you're also interested in. But those are the 3 kind of websites or sources that I use when I'm looking for recordings.
Yes, and make sure that when you're on YouTube that you're listening to renowned orchestras. If you're listening to the entire recording, ABC High School might have a really fabulous orchestra and they might be playing it true to what the composer intended, but it's probably safer to listen to the New York Phil or the Vienna Philharmonic or somebody like that.
Great. So this one, would a student stronger in technique or stronger in musicality stand out in an audition? And I could see this question being different for our different conductors. So I would love for each of you to answer this one. Chelsea, you're still on if you want to go ahead.
Sure. It really just depends, especially at the prelude strings level. I think it would depend even more on your instrument. For example, this past year, we had very few violists in prelude strings. So of course I would be listening to somebody who was very technically accurate in their audition. Same for a bass player, because there's not a lot of other people to fall back on. So you want to make sure that you really just need to be well-rounded, and maybe like a 50-50 split, especially for prelude strings, with technicality versus musicality.
Dr. Kang, what do you think?
I agree too, like kind of half and half. You can just play like fabulously in your technique and then you don't have any dynamics. And then you cannot just play very musical and then it's all out of tune or at the wrong spot. So I think just half and half. Yeah.
And Ms. Bovell?
I'm in agreement with both. I mean, it really is a half and half. It's like Mr. Kang said, you can't be technically sound, but then can't play a phrase. Whereas you can't be the greatest musician, but then you can't play accidentals or play in tune. So it really is, they both go hand in hand.
Great. Lizzie asked, do we usually do blind or live auditions? And I think Ms. Bovell, I'm going to have you start on this one because this is something that we've discussed a lot about.
Do we usually do blind or live auditions? So in the year that I have been here, we have done live auditions, and the live auditions have been blind. Ms. Debbie, please feel free to step in and correct me, or Ms. Brittany, you as well, feel free to step in and correct me. So they have usually been blind, but because this year is very special due to COVID-19, we've had to do things a little bit differently. And then just within the program, we're finding different ways to be a little bit more inclusive. So our auditions this year will not be blind, because Mrs. Subick and I feel it's really important to be able to see what you are able to do on your instrument technically, because especially in the youth symphony where we have our principal spots and our concert master, I need to be able to see basically where you're starting at, how you're holding the bow, maybe how you're pulling the bow, what's your left hand facility, so that I can have a better judge of where to seat you in the ensemble as a string player. So hopefully that made sense. If not, again, we will try to clarify that question even better.
Ms. Subick, you have anything to add?
I think generally in the past, Prelude Strings auditions have always been live, but not behind a screen, so that everybody can see each other, which I think is maybe different for the two other ensembles. And I think maybe that is that way for a couple of reasons. For the younger students, generally, you're still building your posture, so it's very important for us to be able to see your posture and your technique. It also maybe takes some of the mystery and some of the anxiety away for a younger student to play face-to-face for somebody instead of playing to a screen. But like Ms. Bovell said, yes, this year everything will be, it won't be blind, but it also will not be live. It'll be video recorded.
And then Dr. Kang's in a little bit of a different situation. So do you want to explain why you'd rather have it be blind, Dr. Kang?
The blind. Okay, so for my group, yeah, I think we before my auditions always live and a blind too. But this year, you guys can just submit the recording, but I would rather just listen to the audio rather than seeing the person, because I teach some students, my private students, so I don't want to know who's playing. So I think it's more fair, and then also I know a lot of students from different high schools. So I think it's more fair for me just not to see them. I just listen to the audio. Yeah.
Great. And this is a question from Ian Greer. If an excerpt has two parts, first and second violin as example, would you recommend learning the second part once you feel you have mastered the first part? Dr. Kang, why don't you take this? You're a violinist.
No. I think what the person meant is like double stops, right? Not first part and second part. If they have like violin 1, violin 2, then you just learn a violin 1. I think you meant like a double stops. Right? So like if you see for orchestra audition, usually when you see like 2 notes, you don't play 2 notes. Even if you audition for the professional orchestra, like if you think it's really easy, you still play only the top line. So that's what I did when I went to those auditions for the professional orchestra. So I think you see like 2 or 3 notes, especially you have 3 notes, don't play 3, just play the top one. Even you think like you can play the second and then the third parts, just play the melodic line, you'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay, and then we have a question from Isabel about seating this year. She, I believe, is in string orchestra. Could each conductor maybe talk about how seating is going to work for next year? We'll start with Dr. Kang since you're on the screen.
Okay, so for the sitting audition, I think we're going to have one live sitting audition in August, late August or September. So we'll be able to hear everyone play, and then we'll have a new sitting. So even for the old members, they still need to do the sitting audition. Yes.
Ms. Subick?
Generally, Prelude Strings does not have seating auditions. I think for this year, I've been playing with the idea for next season to switch up the seating for every concert. So you won't sit in the same seat the entire season, just to give everybody a little bit of a chance to play in different parts of the orchestra or different areas of the orchestra. Your section probably won't change, but your location might. And that's really important to be able to play in the front, in the middle, and in the back. A lot of people think that only the best players ever get to play in the front, but that's really not true, especially in a larger, more intermediate level orchestra. You need a lot of strong players in the back of the section as well, so that the sound does not dissipate or fall apart as you get closer to the back of the orchestra. So yeah, we don't really have seating auditions for Prelude Strings, but I also don't want you guys to feel like stuck in your places. So I think for this coming season, we're going to switch it up every concert.
And then Ms. Bovell, speak on seating a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So just like Mr. Kang said, Youth Symphony does do 2 seating auditions a year. Normally it'll be in late August, and then there's another one, I believe, in January. And the way that I have done seating this year was basically the first 2 desks are those who score the highest. And then like Ms. Subick said, I start to rotate for the previous stands towards the back. because I feel that it's important that students are able to play in the front, middle, and the back, because there are many challenges throughout every section in the orchestra. And then the woodwinds and brass seating, those all rotate. And then the percussion section rotate parts.
And just to clarify, because it keeps coming up, kickoff weekend seating is typically determined by their first audition, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And actually, while I have you, we've got a lot of questions about Concertmaster.
Sure.
And so how will the Concertmaster auditions be different than regular seating auditions? Will you be listening for different things? Somebody else asked, does the Concertmaster re-audition each year? Yeah.
So Concertmaster does not re-audition each year. Basically, if you are chosen as Concertmaster, you are Concertmaster for the entire season. And the way that audition works is for the seating audition in August, there is a separate Concertmaster excerpt. And so if you are interested in auditioning for Concertmaster, you are also to prepare the Concertmaster excerpts in addition to the excerpts for the seating audition. So hopefully that makes sense. So when you go into the room, basically say, you will be asked, will you be auditioning for Concertmaster? If yes, then you also play those excerpts. If not, that's okay too.
Great. And then we have some kind of specific questions about videos that I'm going to let Miss Debbie handle. Again, this is new territory for us, so bear with us as we figure this out with you all.
Yes, as Miss Brittany Cooper said, yes, this is new for all of us, and I think for many of you, it may well be the first time that you have recorded and listened to yourself. So just to echo what the conductors have been saying and to clarify it, you will submit, all auditions are virtual this year. None will be live in May. Hopefully at the end of the summer in August, we'll be able to have seating and placement auditions and late auditions as well. And hopefully those will be live. Just right now, we can't really address that. So we're looking at figuring out how to get these annual auditions done as well as possible, you know, within the constraints that we have with COVID-19. So if you have filled out the audition online form, you should have received instructions from me as to how to submit your recording. Now, unless you're in string orchestra, you will submit a video. String orchestra candidates will only submit an audio recording. Okay, so the constraints within that are that it should be no more than 10 minutes. You're going to do it pretty much in the order that we've asked in the email: solos, scales, excerpts, no sight reading for anybody, actually. The scales, we've told you in the main brochure what scales are requested, but you will not have to play all of those. The week before, May 20th, we will email you exactly which scales will be required on your audio or video. Okay, so you don't have to play all of them on this particular recording. Then you'll upload that to some sort of online platform, YouTube, Vimeo, and provide us the link. Don't send us the actual recording as a separate file. Don't email us that as an attachment. We just don't have the capacity to be able to accept that much bandwidth and just megabytes. So please just send us those links, and we'll be sure that the judges see them and that they're able to judge them accordingly. Okay, so just some general thoughts on that, and conductors, feel free to add to this. If you have never done a recording of yourself, I would do a little practicing. I would not send us the very first recording that you do of everything. You might want to make a copy or two of yourself and listen to it, and then go back and maybe do it again. The only thing that we ask is that you submit everything in one recording. We can't accept something that's like 3 different recordings that includes your solo and your excerpts and your scales. They all need to be in one recording, okay? If it is a video recording, yes, make yourself visual. Try it in different rooms in your house. Some rooms may sound better than others. I would not do it outside. There will be a lot of competing and background noise. Try to shut the door and make it as the less background noise that you possibly can. And conductors, do you have anything to add on that as far as how you would like to listen to these recordings? They don't have to be professional. Use your own devices, your iPhone, your iPad, your computer. You don't have to go out and rent anything. This doesn't have to be really high tech. It really doesn't. You just want to have everything within one recording and just do the best that you can. And I'm going to mute out now and give them a chance to add anything that they might feel is useful.
Just like Miss Debbie said, make sure that you listen to your recording before you submit it. That's what's going to be great about this audition process is it's not just one take. You can record yourself 10 times and send in the one that you're the most proud of. But make sure that you are listening to the entire recording before you submit it. That way, if there is some background noise, maybe your little brother is, trying to get in, or you don't like the way your scale sounded, you can just redo it and submit it that way. But yeah, don't over analyze. Just use your iPhone. It's fine. Just make sure that we can see who you are. I think for me, I would really love to see your hand position. Check out those bow holds, or just your posture. But yeah, don't go to any great lengths to make it a super duper professional recording, because we all understand what everybody's working with.
Something else I wanted to add to what Ms. Debbie was saying was, one, practice playing in front of whatever recording device you're going to be using, because it's going to feel unnatural at first. And I know sometimes when I practice conducting in front of my camera, I have to get the nerves out because it's such a different mental psychology. And then also when you're practicing in front of your recording device, don't do it all in one day. Meaning, if you do a take of, all of your audition materials, take a break, step away from it, maybe listen to it, and then the next day, maybe go back and record it again. And then the second thing I wanted to also add was, remember that even though we are all at home, this recording is still supposed to look professional, meaning don't film your video in sweats and a t-shirt. So still either dress up, meaning business casual, or business. Wear some nice slacks, wear a nice top. So you still want to be presented professionally in front of the recording for us, not like you're rolling out of bed.
Anything to add, Dr. Kang, before we move on to the next one? No, okay. Miss Debbie, somebody asked about scales, and I don't know the answer to this. How many scales will they be asked to play?
Again, that may vary according to the ensemble. Generally, there's a major and a minor scale. I believe Youth Symphony Winds have to do a chromatic scale. There's a listing of those scales on the brochure and on the website. And they should also be on the audition materials that are with the excerpts. But only a couple of those will be requested.
And then, Miss Debbie, I'm going to send you to the chat because we have some questions about emails. Well, I go back and ask another question from Catherine McLean. This is a really interesting question, Catherine. Catherine asked, do you look for orchestral dynamics or solo dynamics on excerpts?
That's a great question. I look for what the composer wrote, being quite honest, so like I tell my kids all the time, I'm a stickler for dynamics, because my teacher in grad school was a stickler for dynamics. So whatever is written on that page is what I would like to see you come in and do for that audition. But if you're playing your solo piece, a mixture of both. I still want to see what the composer wrote, but then I also want to see your personality and what you have thought of as a musician for that piece.
And I see Ms. Subick and Dr. Kang nodding their heads, so I think they're in agreement. So that if they're not, they can unmute and jump in. Okay. So for your excerpts, what the composer wrote, and for your solo, what the composer wrote. So we're gonna lean on what dynamics the composer put in there. Here's Zoe Wolf again asking about concertmaster auditions. She said, for seating/concertmaster auditions, do you listen for different elements than you do for in regular auditions?
Yes, that's a great question. For anyone who would like to be concertmaster, I am listening for one, your sound, your projection, and then basically your personality in terms of will you be able to lead? Because concertmaster is all about leading from that very first seat. It's also about being in agreement or just being able to be, I guess, bold enough to turn to your section or turn to the entire string section and say, no, do it this way, or no, do it that way. So I'm really looking for your sound. Do you have that personality of being a leader? And these are all things that one can really tell from how you play.
And I just want to jump in and do a little pitch, y'all. If you are interested in being a concertmaster, we have a workshop coming up on Thursday. It's at 5 p.m. It will be on Zoom, and it will be with two people who know a lot about being concertmaster, with Clay Hancock, who is the current concertmaster of the Youth Symphony, and Barry Cooper, who is the concertmaster of the Memphis Symphony. So they will be talking about, you know, how to lead as a concertmaster, what makes an effective leader in an orchestra. So I would definitely encourage you to check out that. You can, I'll type in the chat where you can go to register for that workshop, but we would absolutely love to have you. Gloria asked, and I think I know the answer, and I think you've touched on it a little bit, but will excerpts from seating auditions be considered as potential pieces for a concert?
For
Dr.
me, yeah.
Kang, yeah.
For my group, yes.
For me, it's a mixture, both yes and no. I'm always, you know, just based on the kids that I hear, I might choose some of the excerpts for potential pieces, or I might be able to see what the group can do and choose something that will really stretch the kids. So it really depends for me.
Same for me.
So it might be a mystery. You might not know what you're playing in that coming season. So somebody asked, in the recording, do we just say what we are playing for solos? So I think maybe it'd be great, Ms. Debbie, if you could kind of touch back on how we might want those videos to look, you know, introduce yourself, you know, say this is my solo piece, da 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 da, by the composer, that kind of thing. So Ms. Debbie, can you take that one?
Yes, and it's pretty much, if you've ever done an audition, this is what the monitor would say. They would introduce you as with your number, your audition number, basically, if it's a blind audition, and say the name of your solo. And then from there on, the monitor or the judges would let you know what scales and what, you know, what excerpts to do. Basically, the only thing that you're going to have to say is at the beginning, your name, your audition is for youth symphony or for string orchestra. You can say your instrument if you like, but that's really all that's necessary. The title of your solo is a good thing to do, but again, don't let it run, you know, longer than 10 minutes. And basically your solo, don't let it run longer than 2 minutes. Even a minute and a half is really enough. After 2 minutes, it probably won't be audited.
Great. Jeffrey asked, what level will the wind ensemble be? I will take this one, and I'm just going to be very candid with you on this question. Jeffrey, we had hoped to have a wind ensemble and a concert band, and we'd hoped the concert band was going to be more of a middle school level, and the wind ensemble was going to be top tier level, same as the youth symphony. Really, it's going to depend on how recruitment goes and what students we get. We're very hopeful to be in the schools and recruiting, and now we're having to move to a very different recruitment model, which is remote. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question yet. I know where we want to be. I know where we want to grow. This first year, it might not be as high as a level as we're hoping that it will be. We might only have one ensemble. It just depends on how many students we actually get to audition. But I know that my big dream is definitely, if not this season, the next season. It's going to be one of those all West honor band level ensembles that students will really enjoy and get to play challenging rep in that group. So it's a COVID-19 answer. We are very fluid and flexible during this challenging time. Okay, we have one from Beck Schmidt. She is a trumpet player in the youth symphony. Do you have any overall practice tips and or tricks for preparing an audition, as in specifically when practicing and how to do so, especially for an audition purpose? You guys are quiet. One of you has to go. Ms. Bovell.
I was thinking about this. Firstly, Beck, nice to visually see you. So I was thinking about this from my own point of view and how I prepare for auditions. And so I know for me, the first thing that my teacher would say, listen to recordings so that you get an overall sense of the piece. Being a trumpet player, you know, I don't know if this is necessary for you, but putting in your fingerings so that you know exactly what finger to place down, but then also, you know, in terms of knowing your embouchure and knowing where that note is gonna lie. But my teacher would also always tell me, you have to live and breathe that music, meaning you have to know it very well, and you basically just have to practice it to the point where you are comfortable with every single note, where that note is starting, where it's going, and just that you have an overall shape to the piece. And for this audition, since there's 3 different components, meaning the solo, the scale, and the excerpts, I would basically break that down into a day. So, you know, say that maybe for 20 minutes you're going to practice your scales, take a break, and then spend another half hour, 45 minutes on your solo stuff, take a break, and just kind of maybe do that 4 times out of your week so that you're also giving your body and your physical self just a chance to kind of ingrain everything that you've been working on. And then as you get to the week of the audition, every single day, honestly, I would practice in the clothes that I'm going to wear for the audition or something similar to what I'm going to wear for the audition, so that I put myself into that headspace of what this audition is going to feel like. And I would run through all of my material so that one, you have the mental stamina, and that so that you also have the physical stamina of being able to play through it for the audition recording. So hopefully that's helpful. Like I said, if not, you know, ask another question and we will be happy to clarify it even further. But Ms. Subick or Mr. Kang, do you have anything else to add?
I guess when you get to the audition, a piece of advice is to hear what your piece is going to sound like before you start playing it. And that's something that I do even now when I'm conducting a piece, is I will hum to myself silently the first few bars so that I'm not just going in cold. So make sure that you know exactly how you want it to sound before you begin playing. And that goes with your solo, your excerpts, your scales, everything.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Just before, maybe a week before the audition, you start to really, you practice not just your music. So you practice from scales and then to your music and then the excerpt, kind of like run through a couple of times. So you feel like very comfortable. If you, because sometimes if you have a sight reading, then you should practice. Just pick some sight reading from online and then kind of practice too. So in that routine. So once you go to the audition room, you get used to that already.
Great. And then I think one more question from Cameron Allen. He's a French horn player in our youth symphony. When will we have wind ensemble / concert band auditions? So Cameron, those are happening when the other auditions are happening as well. If you are a new student, new to our program, we recommend that you audition in May 27th. And again, the deadline to register for those auditions is Thursday. So yes, those are happening in May. If we still have more spots available, we will also have auditions in August as well. All of that, you know, August auditions might move to later. There are things that might change, y'all, and we're going to keep you as up to date and posted as we can on these changes. But, you know, just understand that we've got to be flexible because these are different times. I also I put the link to the Concertmaster Workshop, where to go to register for the Concertmaster Workshop. That's Thursday at 5 p.m. with Barry Cooper and Clay Hancock. Additionally, I put Miss Debbie's email address in there. She's the one who knows all the information. So if you have any other specific questions about auditions, about your video, anything like that, feel free to reach out to her. Email is best right now because we're trying to keep her away from the office, keep her safe at home. We need her safe. But I think we're at 5 o'clock, so I think that wraps us up, and I hope we've answered all the questions that we've seen in the chat. We really appreciate you all joining us. We hope that you're staying safe at home, practicing lots, and that you have a really great audition experience. But thank you so much for joining us. Have a lovely evening, and we hope to see you soon. Bye, everybody.